let's solve another rational equation. This is actually called a proportion, when you have a fraction is equal to a fraction. But the approach we use to solve this is the same as any other approach that has fractions in your equation. We use the LCM. Remember, m is multiples. And since n plus 2 doesn't factor, and 3n minus 8 doesn't factor, those are our multiples. Common, well, there's nothing common in these denominators, so we're going to use all the leftovers as part of our LCM. 3n minus 8 and our n plus 2. So that's our LCM. What we do with the LCM is we multiply to each term in the problem. And then we go and reduce to clear the denominators out of all of the equation. Now also recall that when you do this, there may be restrictions on the variable, the value that the variable may take on in its final answer. No denominator can equal 0 because we cannot divide by 0. So we can take each of these factors from our LCM, our common denominator, and set them equal to 0 or not equal to 0, and then solve. So n should not take on the value of negative 2. Here it's a little tougher to see what value n should not take on. So if we add 8 to both sides of the equation, we have 3n is equal to 8. And if we multiply both sides of the equation by 1/3, we have that n cannot take on the value of 8/3. So those are the only two answers we can't get when we go to solve this equation. Let's clear parentheses and multiply using the distributive property. 5n plus 10 is equal to 3n squared minus 8n. And we have n's on both sides of the equation, so we can add a negative 5n. And have 10 is equal to 3n squared minus 13n. But we still have more than one variable n, so we need to have 0. By adding a negative 10 to both sides of the equation, we will accomplish our goal. 0 is equal to 3n squared minus 13n minus 10. We still have more than one variable, so to solve this equation, we try and factor. We break down the factors of the first term, 3n and 1n. Factors of the last term, we have a couple of choices, 1 and 10, 2 and 5. I want 13, which is a relatively large number, so I'm going to go 3 times 5 and put the 2 here. The signs are different. The result should be negative. 3 times 5 is 15. If I make that a negative and add 2, I should get negative 13. So now we use the zero product property, and we take each one of these factors and set it equal to 0, because the only way that you can multiply and get 0 as your answer is if you multiplied by 0. Solving for n by adding 2 to both sides, we have 3n is equal to negative 2. Multiplying both sides of the equation by 1/3, we have n is equal to negative 2/3. Now that wasn't one of our restrictions, so that's a fine answer. Let's check out this other equation. By adding 5 to both sides of the equation, we get n is equal to 5. Again, not one of our restrictions, so the answer for this problem has two solutions, both 5 and negative 2/3.